Tim, you're not seated in your normal place. Can you please provide our invocation?
Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this opportunity to gather. Thank you, Father, for rain in the week. Thank you for this wonderful place that we have to come and meet, the food that we enjoy. We thank you so much for Ray and Amaya and Madison for their hard work, preparing and serving us. We thank you for Andrew being with us here today. We thank you, Father, for the words that he's going to share with us. And we pray, Father, your blessings on this time. We thank you, Father, for always each and every opportunity that we have in the body and on the service of ourselves. It's in your name we pray.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any visiting Rotarians with us or guests?
I recognize you.
Angela? Happy to have you, Morgan. Welcome. She's also a fellow realtor, so. And Robbie has another special guest.
Yes, I have my daughter Lily here
Welcome, Lily. I'm so glad to have you. I tried to get Stella, my daughter, to come to Rotary today, and she turned me down. So I didn't know it was bring your daughter to Rotary week, but shoot. All right, any other guests with us? Oh yeah, Grayson. Yeah, Grayson's here. Hi, Grayson. We'll still clap for you, Grayson. Okay, me and Tara will clap for you, Grayson. There's someone else at this table who's a guest. Did anyone bring him?
I brought this gentleman here.
Oh, okay.
Your name is?
Matt.
Oh,
Matt. That's funny. We have a Matt in the club. Welcome. It's good to have you. He's got his new summer look. So. All right. Let's see. Tara, can I pick on you to do happy bucks for us, please?
I didn't mean to make eye contact with that one.
I know you're not. Big mistake.
All right, so I'll start us off. I'm happy. Summer weekend. Happy to have Andrew here today.
I am happy to have my daughter Lily here today.
Hey. Good job. Good job.
Happy to be here.
I'm happy Matt didn't injure himself cutting his beard off.
I'm happy it's almost the weekend and I leave for the beach Saturday, but please do a picture for me, please.
You will.
Happy for our guests and the
Because I didn't have him.
glad to have Morgan here. I'm happy to be here.
Happy.
Happy.
Happy for the good food and our guests. Happy to be here.
We're working things out here. Delicious food.
Happy to be here.
Glad to have Andrew with us, and I got a confessional, I didn't recognize Matt, so I walked right by and gave him a visit.
Well, that's not unusual.
Yeah.
It's worth more than a while. He didn't speak to me.
Happy to be here with y'all.
I'm going to the beach this weekend, but maybe it cancels out because it's supposed to rain all weekend, so that's not so good. True, that's true. It'll be relaxing.
And what does this go for?
Good in the world. Thank you, Tara. Do we have any announcements today for the club? Any announcements? All right, I think it's a quiet week. All right, well, I will turn it over to Tim to introduce his guest.
All right, it
is a privilege to introduce to you someone who I know is no stranger to many of you, Dr. Andrew Corley. Andrew is a almost lifelong resident of Lawrence County. Having been raised here, he's a graduate of Lawrence District 55 High School, a graduate of Presbyterian College, and he slipped away and spent several years in Shelby, North Carolina, while getting his Master's of Divinity from the Gardner-Webb School of Divinity. While in Shelby, North Carolina, Andrew served as a youth minister, then a senior pastor at the Pleasant Hill, right? I want to make sure I got that right. Pleasant Hill Baptist Church in Shelby. In 2020, around October, Andrew was discerning his calling, and that calling led him to come back to First Baptist Church of Lawrence to serve as our Minister of Youth and Recreation, although that title does not do Andrew justice for all that he does. Not only is he a phenomenal youth minister in our church, but he also has spearheaded and began multiple outreach efforts in our community and greeting our visitors, and also is kind of the de facto person in charge of all of our sanctuary technology. And I don't know how he finds time to do all of that, but he does. And in the meantime, found time to complete his Doctor of Ministry degree, also from the Gardner-Webb School of Divinity. Andrew is married to Megan, who teaches at Lawrence Elementary School. They have 2 children, Davis and Abigail, and Davis is going into 2nd grade and Abigail to kindergarten, right? And and they have just been wonderful to get to know during my time there at First Baptist. But the reason I've asked Andrew to come be with y'all, though we've kind of passed the month for this, during the month that I did schedule Andrew, it was in our Youth Awareness Month and talking about all kinds of programs and things. Andrew's not coming to share necessarily about First Baptist Youth Program. Instead, what I've asked Andrew to do is to do a summary of a presentation that he did while and during my first fall there at First Baptist, and on the differences that today's teenagers face. I know that I'm sure that we all have said, things like, today's youth they don't work as hard, or they don't do this, or that sort of thing. And I want you to know, one, every generation has said that about the generation coming after them. But also, today's generation with social media, with computer technology, with the rise of AI, and many other factors, face difficulties that no generation before them had faced. And Andrew did an amazing job there. Then in 2022, I'm sure, has even seen some differences in the last 3 years in his ministry at First Baptist as technology and access to it only continues to increase. But so I wanted him to share with you about that today, because it's something that would help you in understanding your kids, your grandkids, understanding those that may be in your church's youth ministries and children's ministries. And I did want to say, before I turn it over to Andrew, Elizabeth Franklin, our Director of Children's Ministry, is going to be part of this. She was unable to be here today, and so Andrew's going to go with it solo ride, but I guarantee you he has a lot to share with you. And so, Andrew, I'm really pleased that you're here. Thank you so much for taking your time to come and speak to Rotary today.
Thank you. It is good to be here with y'all. It is rare events that I get to be introduced as Dr. Corley, so that's always a fun. That's always a fun moment. But am glad to be with y'all and get to discuss something that has really been an interest and a passion of mine, which is recognizing kind of the sociological trends that are emerging in culture and how those are impacting us and what is going on. As Tim said, some of this material was birthed out of something I did for our parents at First Baptist several years ago with some updates, but I will tell you I had 3-hour sessions for that. So condensing that down, there's going to be a lot of stuff left out, and there's going to be a lot of stuff that we touch on that we're not able to expand on. So if everything's done, when we're done with everything, I can try and expand on anything you'd like and discuss some of those things, and hopefully we won't go so quick that we can't follow it. But what I wanted to discuss with you are trends. The trends that are emerging, that are shaping kids going into what is being called the Alpha generation, Generation Alpha, for our for younger children, and then teenagers and young and emerging adults, or young and emerging adults. So Generation Z, you've heard of. Millennials, you've heard of. Hopefully, we're moving into some trends that are beginning to shape or have been shaping those things. One thing I want to say from the jump, and Tim touched on this already, but it's something I always tell parents in conversation, is when you're dealing with, when we talk about, kids these days, what they're going through, how they are, what I would argue and what I believe I'm right about, what I maintain I'm pretty strongly right about, is that the whats don't change, the hows do. And what I mean by that is that the things that young people are going through, the things that kids, teenagers, young and emerging adults are going through have not changed. It is the way in which they go through them. It is the way in which those things manifest. All of us, particularly in that adolescent period of life, are looking to answer 3 questions. We're looking to answer, who am I? It's a question of identity. Where do I belong? The question of community, of belonging. Where do I fit in? And what do I do? What is my purpose? We're looking at identity, belonging, and purpose. And the challenges we face usually fall into one of those categories of identity, belonging, and purpose. You went through challenges related to identity, belonging, and purpose. They didn't look the same as your children, your grandchildren, even some of your great-grandchildren as you go through them. But the core is there. And so when we're faced with these challenges, when we're faced with, things have changed so rapidly, well, yeah, a lot has changed. But when you get to the root, you know what it is that they're facing because you've been through it. And again, the how might have changed, but if you filled out a postcard in the back of Tiger Beat magazine to join somebody's fan club, now you just follow them on Instagram, and instead of getting mailed a packet every month that says what they did and what music they like and what food they like, you see it right in front of them. If you were ever on a 3-way call line or a party line, you've been in a group chat. You're just experiencing it a different way. But there are some trends that are coming in that are impacting young people, and I want to talk about those. I'm trying to focus on 8, and like I said, we're going to go through them pretty quick because I've only got so much time, but bear with me. And the first one is the challenge of extended adolescence, the challenge of shifts in adulthood. The researchers at Fuller Youth Institute, which is a youth-focused research institute in California, have used language of an earlier starting line and a later finish line for adolescence. So step 1, what do I mean by adolescence? Adolescence is the period between biological and social or psychological adulthood. So biological adulthood, right, is the moment at which you can have children. Biologically, you are an adult when you can procreate, right? That's the biological definition. Psychologically, we know you're an adult when your brain has finished development. And we know that biological growth and brain development are not necessarily the same thing. There's a reason you can't rent a car until you're 25. Because what we found is there are some things that maybe you're not quite ready for, even if we decided you can smoke cigarettes, you can drink alcohol, you can go to war, you can vote. It's interesting that renting a car is the one that we draw the line on, isn't it? But there are things that as your brain develops, we trust you in society to do different things. Psychological adulthood, where is your brain? And then there is social adulthood. And social adulthood is the moment at which, society kind of considers you an adult. So think to yourself, what are the markers of adulthood? What are the things that you would say, oh, when a person has checked off these boxes, they are an adult? Graduating high school, does that make you an adult? Graduating college, are you an adult when you get married? Are you an adult when you have children? Are you an adult when you buy your first house? Are you an adult when you find yourself in the job that's going to become a career? And what has happened over the last, good grief, moving towards 60-ish, 50 to 60 years now, is that biological adulthood is starting earlier and earlier, and social adulthood is coming later. So puberty is starting earlier. The average girl enters into puberty between 3 and 5 years earlier than they did 50 years ago. Boys have the change is a little lower, but it's also moved earlier. While at the same time, all those metrics we talked about, those social metrics, have been delayed. So the median age of marriage is 7 years. The median person gets married 7 years later in life than they did in 1960. To put in perspective how fast things have changed. From 1960 to 2010, there was a 5-year shift in the age of marriage. So 50 years, five-year shift. From 2010 to 2019, there was another 2-year shift. It came 2 years later. So there is a rapid delay in the age of marriage. There's a rapid delay in the age at which people have their first child. The average woman will have her first child at 30. The median woman will have her first child at age 30. So there's a delay in when people have children. The average person, show of hands, how many of you were in the job, and if not the specific job, were working for the company, were in like the field of the career that you have or will retire from by the time you were 25? Like I said, maybe you were at an entry-level position in a company that you got farther in. The average American has 6 jobs between the age of 18 and 26, and not they work at McDonald's during the summer. Between 18 and 26, the average American goes through 6 different jobs. People don't settle in careers the way they once did. The median age for buying your first home in America as of 2019 is 33. 40% of adults move back home, move back to their parents' house in their 20s. 40% of people find their way back to their parents' home for some length of time during their 20s. Like I said, all of these processes, all of these things are delayed. And so what's happening? This adolescent period, this moment of adulthood is coming later, while at the same time, certain things are starting a whole lot faster. So like I said, people are going through puberty. One of the things I talk about at church is when we're talking about, I'm a Baptist minister, so when we talk about purity, when we talk about sexual ethics, when we talk about that sort of thing, there was a time when the average male entered into puberty at 15 and got married at 17. If the average boy now hits puberty at 11 and ain't going to get married until he's 28, we're asking something different of them when we talk about how they respond to sexual urges in their life, right? But that is true across the board. And so what we're seeing is that while a lot of these markers of adulthood are coming much later. Other things are starting way faster. A 9-year-old who plays travel baseball will play more games in a year than a Major League Baseball player. Stop and think about that for a minute. Does that seem right? Does that seem, and I'm going to the travel ball around another day, but no offense to any of you, if that's where you are in life. But we are specializing people in sports younger than they ever have. We are specializing people in career tracks younger than they ever have. We are exposing, because of shifts in culture, folks are exposed to more adult ideas than they ever have. Some of y'all will remember there was a time you had PBS on TV, right? And there was a certain kind of content that would show up on PBS. You had network television, certain things could show up on network TV at certain times. Then you had cable. Well, cable was another thing, but still, what came on cable at 10 o'clock at night was different than what came on cable at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then eventually you got to, like, when we got to HBO and things like that paid tier of television, there was greater content. My kids have Netflix, and everything that has ever existed is on Netflix. And if not Netflix, it's on one of the other streaming services. You could control, my parents could control what music I listened to based on what CD they bought me. Now every song ever is on Spotify. Except for Garth Brooks. Garth thinks he's too good for streaming. And so just the control of what content people are exposed to is different. What they experience is different. And so on the one hand, there are all of these things that are happening earlier, but when are they an adult? When do they become adult? When do I, as an adolescent, believe that I'm an adult? Those things are happening earlier, and it's shifting what's going on in our children's minds. The second one, and these two are the ones I'm going to spend the most time on, the rest we're going to come through a little bit, is the advancement in technology. And y'all know this, we have gone through the largest and fastest technological revolution in the history of the world. And we've actually, so I was born in 1990, I've probably gone through the largest and fastest technical revolution in the history of the world 3 or 4 times just in my lifetime. But no 2 generations have a different experience of life than my parents and my children. My dad's experience of being 7 years old in Clinton, South Carolina, and my son's experience of being 7 years old 10 miles down the road are as different as any 2 generations in the history. You had more in common with George Washington than my dad has in common with Davis in terms of the experience of childhood, because technology has moved that fast. Things have gone so quickly. If you go back 100 years, and again, when I have more time, I do a list of just what was invented in the 1920s to make you realize how quickly all of these things happened. But we are going through the biggest revolution in technology in history. Here's the thing, anybody know what happens traditionally when there are major periods of technological advancement, particularly in the realm of communication? Any history? Anyone remember what happened after the printing press? Within 100 years of the printing press. Oh, okay, we can talk about the good things. The Bible, the Bible, literacy increased. Those were good. While all that was going on, what was happening in Europe? Late Middle Ages. Massive land force. Y'all remember the 30 Years' War? Y'all remember reading about the wars that followed the Protestant Reformation, the Protestant Reformations? Y'all remember reading about the revolutions in Europe, French Revolution, all these things. So what happened, now the French Revolution was several years later, what happened within 20 years of the invention of the radio? World War I and II. There has never been a massive shift in communication technology that has not brought with it incredible social and political upheaval. And we're all living through the biggest shift in communication technology that has ever existed. So does the world start to make a little more sense when you think about that? We are dealing with things we don't know, and so two big picture ideas, well, three, I'll do three. And one is that things are moving faster than we can keep up with. Y'all remember Jurassic Park, the movie? There's a point in Jurassic Park where Jeff Goldblum, I'm going long. There's a point in Jurassic Park where Jeff Goldblum looks at the folks who created the dinosaurs and said, your scientists were so busy figuring out that they could do it that they didn't realize they should. I'm real convinced we're not supposed to know each other like we did. I've become real convinced that we're not supposed to have the connection to each other on a broad scale that we have. Especially when you get to, and this is going to get political for a minute, sorry, but especially when you get to like the size and diversity of America works better when we don't know each other. And that sounds that sounds bad, but we were better off when we didn't know what was going on in Wisconsin. When you couldn't get on and find out something to be mad about that was happening in another part of the country that's never going to affect you, but now it's in your face. And maybe, how are we going to stop that from coming to Lawrence? Well, it's not. But now it's in our minds and we got to worry about it. So things have been moving, and we have been lucky to a certain extent that the people driving that movement have been more concerned with like, okay, how can I make money, than what if they really put their minds to doing something malevolent with these things. But technology is moving faster than we can keep up with, and we just need to be prepared because we at least have like the psychological maturity to see new things coming in and think about them critically. Kids don't. Now I use ChatGPT in school, and they don't worry about it. And so that's coming quickly. The second thing is technology has removed our need for interaction and relationship. This is less true in Lawrence. But if you get to Greenville, if you get to Columbia, definitely if you get to Charlotte, if you're a 24-year-old, you can work from home, do all your work sitting at a computer. You can order food delivered to your door, groceries delivered to your door. You do e-checks. If you are unhealthy enough that you feel like you need to do a doctor, you do an e-check-in. Your day ends, you pop on, particularly if you're male, you turn on a gaming system where you talk in a headset to people, and that's your interaction. You have access to levels of pornography that have never existed in the history of the world. You don't have to leave your house to get all of your base needs met. And when you start to draw, one of my last points really delves into that, but when you draw away that need for community and interaction, again, what are the questions we're asking? Who am I? Where do I belong? What is my purpose? If my life doesn't force me to grapple with those questions, where am I going to find the answer? And so technology is doing that. And then the separation of impact from our actions. We can do things without seeing the results. We can say things about people without having to do it to their face. We can throw all kinds of accusations out without having to ever be confronted by them. And so we lose, again, that happens to us as adults. Imagine if you're 12 years old with a cell phone and you can comment on a picture and never have to see what happens. Never mind, I'll come back to that. So the technology's moving. I'm going to have to move fast. We are moving into an unprecedented era of self-sorting. It is interesting that because of that, at the same time, communication and connection has increased and diversity has increased. We'll talk about that. We are more self-sorted than ever before. If you look at 2024 election data, there's more in there, 2020, you can see this more clearly because they haven't done all the work. Politics and geography are connected more than they ever have. I think anyone who's looked at this will tell you we have giant population centers with one political persuasion, and then like mass stretches of land with smaller populations that have the other political persuasion. Then we are sorting ourselves in a way that we've never done. We can choose what information we get. We can choose what news we watch because we like the way it's presented compared to other places. We can choose what we read. We can choose who we talk to. We choose our peers. We see the rise, again, just don't hear this as a judgment, I'm just stating the fact. We have more private education than we've had throughout a lot of American history, which is a form of self-sorting, right? That is, we dictate who our children are going to school with. We dictate who, there is more and more we choose who we go to church with. We'll talk about that a little more in a second as well. But what happens is what the Barna Group, if you're familiar with research from the Barna Group, they refer to this as the normalization of safe spaces, that we put ourselves into groups where we won't be challenged. That our goal is to find ourselves around people who are going to challenge us, which for our children means they've never been challenged. They have never had to think differently. They have never had to think about why they believe. They have never been challenged on a belief and had to articulate a defense of it. They have never made it their own belief. And we're dealing with the ramifications of that. Next trend, I'm going to go quick on this one. The myth of real safety. This has been an emerging trend. Younger generations don't feel safe. And you've got it from like my generation on, there's been this trend that people don't feel safe. But children who are going to school right now they are post-Columbine. They have grown up doing active shooter drills. They've grown up with the idea, some y'all remember tornado drill, earthquake, fire drill. Really thought earthquakes were going to be a bigger deal in my life. But our children have grown up at active shooter drill with that. They are post 9/11, so schools aren't safe. The country isn't safe. They go to the airport, they feel a lack of safety because they're having to jump through all these hoops. So luckily, like the younger they are, the less they didn't know before, so that doesn't impact them. Post-Great Recession, so many people are post-Great Recession and some of the changes that have come in the economy out of that. But we talk about changes in jobs, things like that. The idea that I'm going to get a career that is going to make me financially secure. You don't see that in data from young people. They're post-COVID. Health. Like, can they trust that they're going to be healthy? Can they trust that society isn't going to shut down? So this myth of real safety, young people don't feel safe in the world, and you see that in data. The rise of diversity. This is the most diverse generation that's ever existed. In 2019 was the first kindergarten class in America that was majority minority, and that comes with it. People are being exposed to diversity, diversity of thought, diversity of race, culture, religion, all those things. And there's a response to that, and there's backlash to it. Trend of double-minded parents. Parents are on the one hand the most protective, the most involved generation of parents ever. You remember the helicopter parents? You've heard that phrase. What they talk about now is the lawnmower parent. What does a lawnmower do? It cuts down the obstacle in its way. And so it's not just parents that are hovering, it is parents that are actively removing any obstacle in the path. I've officially gone long. And so it's a parent that is, so on the one hand, parents are hovering. On the other, children are getting computers for much of their life. The computers that put rockets on the moon didn't have as much stuff going on in them as this does. We put satellites in the air with less technological skill than this. Some of you remember, if you were of the right age, when the PlayStation 2 came out, agents in America trying to buy the PlayStation 2 because the components in it could be used for intercontinental ballistic missiles. We're on the PlayStation 5. Things are bad, and so, but people don't think about it. You give a child a phone, you wouldn't give them a computer in their room. You'll let them on Netflix when you wouldn't when 30 years ago you'd block MTV on the computer with parental controls. Parents are overly protected and yet underprotected in a lot of ways. Rise of post-Christian worldview and culture. We are less Christian than we once were, and obviously I can go into that on the church side of things at church, but there's a sociologist, his name is Ryan Burge, and he presents a lot of really compelling information that it is cultural Christianity that has kept America together. It's a depressing book, but that basically everybody going to church on Sunday is the reason America works. If you look at we are the only democracy that is able to have this much geography and this much diversity. And what united us, it was that we did have a predominantly Christian culture, and as that's gone away, you start to see cracks emerge. And so they're the first group that has grown up without that Christian culture. And then the last trend that's emerging is there's a crisis in young men. And some of you have heard talk about this, some of you have experienced it. The reality, as society has looked at what were real examples of inequality. If you look for most of American history, much more men in the workforce, much more men educated, much more men in highest paying positions. All of that was true. The issue was you couldn't do anything about what had already happened. And so 78% of Fortune 500 CEOs are male. Well, you can't go to the Fortune 500 companies and say, sorry, you've got to change your CEO. What you can do is start changing things downstream. That makes the next generation of CEOs a little more balanced, which is a good thing. Like, equality is a good goal, but what we're seeing is young men who never got the benefits of inequality are taking the results of our moves towards equality. And again, that is not me arguing against equality, but I'm going to read to you from Scott Galloway. Some of you may have heard of Scott Galloway. He's was a venture capitalist, teaches at NYU. I'm just going to read you from his book, Adrift. Based on a number of critical measures, education, economics, and socialization, I see a crisis emerging for our young men. While a privileged few, predominantly older, white, and wealthy men wield a disproportionate amount of control in business, politics, and society, many men are failing. It begins early. Parents have higher educational expectations for girls than for boys. Boys are twice as likely to be suspended from school for the same offenses as girls, which correlates to poorer educational outcomes. Across the U.S., enrollment of men in higher education institutions is 2/3 that of women, leading to limited professional opportunities and lower earning potential. Men without a college education earn $900,000 less over their lifetime than college graduates. Young men's ability to find and commit to a meaningful relationship is declining. Young people in America are living with their parents at rates not seen since the 1940s. The group that's seen the sharpest decline in marriage rates is poor men. Research shows that declining marriage rates lead to lower economic output, reduced happiness, and a lower birth rate. A large and growing cohort of bored and lonely, poorly educated men is a malevolent force in any society, but it's truly terrifying in a society addicted to social media and awash in coarseness and in access to guns. There's a reason most mass shooters are male. There's a reason practically all mass shooters are male. And it's it's a combination of access and how people respond to issues in their life. But as society is changing, we are seeing something happening in young men that is scary. And it is, and again, you try to thread that needle of diversity and equality while also recognizing that something's happening that is scary. And there's a lot going on. So, what do we do with all of that? That got dark. What do we do with all that? What can the Rotary do? I want to leave you back with those three questions. Who am I? Where do I belong? What is my purpose? What can the Rotary do? What can business leaders do? What can community leaders do? We can provide answers to those questions. We can provide opportunities to find place, to find purpose, to find opportunity to interact with peers. We can support those things because, again, the whats aren't changing. The questions aren't changing. The things that they're facing are changing. But they're coming in different ways. And figuring out how we're going to aid in dealing with those is what's going to shape what goes on and how our reaction to all these trends are going to take place. So I'm sorry I went long, and I also did a lot of that very quickly, but I was asked to take a moment for questions if there are any. I'll do my best. Yes, sir.
First of all, I agree with everything you said. Second, the one thing you could have said, extremely positive, when you look back over the last 300 years, see the miracle brought to us by founders. We've lasted through all of this so far. We last another 50 years, 100 years, I don't know. But the founders gave us something that it kept working and screw up.
And you could argue we're doing a pretty good job of working and screw it up at this point. But again, I'll keep my commentary to myself. In some cases, but yeah. So yeah, and this one going back is you made it through adolescence with all of the challenges, and there are generations went to war. 18-year-olds got put on ships and never came home. So it's not that the crisis is insurmountable. It's not that people are dealing with things they can't. That it's not that young people are dealing with things they can't overcome, and it's not that they're the first ones who have ever dealt with difficult challenges. There's no reason for me to go negative. There's no reason for me to end that on negative. It is a question of are we willing to react, and can we react, particularly in that technology piece? How far ahead of us does it get before we have opportunity to react?
I was going to say on the technology piece, it's not slowing down. I mean, when I was younger, technology, they say doubled every 10 years, then it was every 7, and now they're saying, the technology is doubling every 5 to 4 years right now.
And here is I'll get fairly political on this. If you look, and no offense to anyone of any age, but if you look at how our government is shaped up, it errs towards older leaders, which is very good in terms of having people who have experience, who have people who have knowledge, who have the time, or do we have the people in place to regulate technologies that they understand? Concerns me a little bit. That is not that things are moving so rapidly, it's not going to slow down. I do think we're starting to see people are catching on. Okay, maybe we do need to lock down some. This isn't good for children, and we need to make it so. We're seeing push to restrict access to social media for minors, which is going to have huge huge positives if it happens. The ability to change in how things. The issue is they're constantly trying to figure out how to make money off of this stuff, and a lot of times the way you make money off of something and the way that is least harmful to society sometimes don't match, and sometimes it takes some time for us to for society to keep you, and when you're on to the next thing before society can do something about the immediate, that presents a problem. But I am an optimist. I think we'll figure it out. Somebody, Dr. Yarber or Megan, had a thought? No.
Yeah, I have read the suicide rate on that part of it, maybe since COVID pandemic.
Yes, it was on the rise already. I left these statistics out because, in theory, I was going shorter than I usually do. What we've seen is, and there's a lot that you can connect to the technology piece. So, in some statistics, young people, there are fewer teen pregnancies than there have been in like the last 70 years. There are fewer sexually transmitted diseases among young people than there have been in the last 70 years. Fewer alcohol-related, like drunk driving deaths than a lot of those physical dangers have decreased.
But that's because they're not connected.
But at the same time, the suicide rate has gone up. The level of people under 18 who are treated for anxiety and depression has gone up. Again, some of that is when you get better at diagnosing things, you treat more people. But they are more anxious, more depressed, more medicated, and again, why are there fewer teen pregnancies? Fewer teen pregnancies are good, but the means with which we're getting to them, if there are fewer teen pregnancies because young men are running their brains on porn, that's a solution, but it's not the right one. And so it's not, I do, like I said, there's an entire, technology gets a whole hour when I usually do this, but it is different. A lot of stuff they're facing is different, but there is, COVID exacerbated a lot of trends that were already in place, because when we were already shifting away from true community. And then again, it's basically like supply and demand. What did people need? They needed to be able to continue working when they couldn't come to an office. They needed to be able to get food when they couldn't go to the grocery store. And so those things were created, and now they're there. And again, we were making it to make it happen. That's why you see a lot of companies get rid of work from home. That's why you see a lot of churches that scrambled to get live streams together during COVID. A lot of big, like mega churches have cut their live streams completely because we're reacting. And that's the thing that we're in a period where we're having to react a lot. Society is moving in ways that are causing us to react, not that we're like able to plan, which is always true. Again, nobody knew the day of Pearl Harbor that was what was going to shape the lives of a generation of Americans. So that's what always happens, which is the hope that when challenges appear, we have a history of rising through them. Anything else? I said I know.
Really recognize the problem. You Scott did that recently. You really recognize the problem. Not having
I don't think this is just me speculating, I don't have data on this, but I don't think we've grappled at the two to me is the combination of connection and self-sorting. And we haven't grappled at, I'll give you an example. Y'all remember the whole thing about there was a school district in Wisconsin that was putting kitty litter in people's rooms because the kids thought they were cats. Do you know what that story is actually about? So the reason there was kitty litter in the classrooms is because the school got a safety grant. And the heaviest, cheapest thing that they could buy were bags of cat litter. The kitty litter was in the classroom to barricade the door in the event of a shooter. It was the result of a safety measure. But somebody somewhere knew a kid that was walking around in cat ears. And the story became, the children think they're cats, and we're letting them pretend to be cats and put litter boxes in schools. We were better off when we didn't know there was kitty litter in the school district in Wisconsin. That just is reality. And in the same world where there's incentive, there's always got to be breaking news. If you turn on CNN, news is always breaking. News didn't used to break all the time. Tom Brokaw wasn't breaking news every night. But when you got to have something to talk about, when the way you make money is on getting people outraged enough to keep listening for hours and hours and hours, all of a sudden you don't worry so much about, well, that story keeps people coming back. And then, Kathy, bless y'all's heart, people show up at the board meeting with all kinds of lists of things that how in the world can you do anything? Because you can't track down where the nonsense came from. But we're all worked up about it, and so it is this knowing what's happening in other places and not liking it. Again, if I can go dark for a second, my fear is that we're learning that we don't like other people as much as we always assumed. That if exposed to people, we don't like them that much. And what does it mean if we don't like each other? What connects us if we don't like each other? That concerns me when I think too deeply. That's why I do youth ministry, so I think deeply. I'm sorry. One more. I'm sorry. I'm rambling.
One way to solve part of that problem is circulating more newspapers. Because you have a control over what you look at, read, control the tone, tempo, all that.
Local. I'll come back and do a local news local news presentation sometime. I try to convince people to help me buy WLBG. It didn't work out. I was going to buy WLBG, and nobody would support me. But you lose local news. Where do you get your news? You get from people who don't have your community's best interest in heart. I'm sorry I went so long.
End it too because it's so interesting. Thank you, Andrew. And so, do you do this at First Baptist that like regular people could go, or do you have to be a parent?
We haven't done one in a while.
Okay.
We'll try and get something on the calendar.
It would be a cool thing for the community because there's so much I wanted to hear more about. So thank you so much. And Andrew, as part of our meeting every week, we ask our speaker to autograph a book that we'll donate. We'll donate to a local elementary school. Thank you so much for being here. Morgan, Lily, thank you guys for being here. Come back anytime, our fellow Rotarians. If you will all please stand and join me in the Corley test. Of the things we think, say, and do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build good wills and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And our motto? Have a great weekend.